Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things that are written therein, for the time is at hand.
Welcome to Word on the Street, where we bring you hot topics. Now, today I've been doing a lot of research on this Ukrainian thing, and I find out that Ukraine and Khazaria is the same place. Alright? And the reason for this war today, it has everything to do with the Bible. Alright? So, approximate extent of the Khazar Empire AD 850. Now, this is modern day Ukraine. I know a lot of you recognize Kiev, alright? And the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, and this landmass is modern day Ukraine. It's one of the same. Now, there are several books on this subject I would like to share. Like this book here is called The Modern Nations, The History of Ukraine. Alright? And I do have another book here. It's called Ukraine, An Illustrated History. Now, this is so deep, man. I've been researching this all day because something inside of me always knew that this Ukraine war was bigger than what they was telling us. So I'm gonna go to the index here, and I just want you to see inside this book about Ukraine, there's a chapter, which is chapter 4, and it says Khazar. So I'm gonna go to that chapter. And if you need to find books, go to Internet Archive. It's very useful. You know, there are several books on here that's inside the universities, and you know, through simple research you can find, you know, whatever book that you're looking for. All right, so we're gonna go to chapter 4. There you go, right there. All right, so let's open that up, and we're gonna read the first paragraph. All right, the name Khazars refers to Turkish-speaking tribes that appeared in the early as the 4th century CE in the steppe north of the Caspian Sea. Just shows you the chart. By the second half of the 7th century, they had concentrated in the region just east of present-day Ukraine, between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. Originally nomads, the Khazars turned to sedentary farming and trade, and sometimes around 650 they created a state structure known in history as the Khazar Cognate. In contrast to the nomadic people from the north and east who preceded them during the 3 centuries before, the Khazars were interested in practicing diplomacy to settle conflicts and create political stability that in turn will enhance their commercial and trading interests. The Byzantine Empire, ever anxious to protect the Black Sea possession, welcomed the opportunity to cooperate with the northern neighbors such as the Khazars. Alright, so right now I'm going to go to this video from this Jewish guy, and he's going to give you his take, and I'll be right back after his commentary with my commentary.
It's an extremely valuable piece of global real estate because it has a very rich soil, a black soil that has a phenomenal agricultural output. a nation of some 42 million people, about the size of France. It's an extremely valuable history. Over the course of this video, I'd like to walk you through the millennial history of Jews in Ukraine and try to describe how they interacted with the peoples of that region. Here you can see Ukraine, a nation of some 42 million people, about the size of France. It's an extremely valuable piece of global real estate because it has a very rich soil, a black soil that has a phenomenal agricultural output. It's often called the breadbasket of Europe. One of the things that we'll see about the peoples of Ukraine, because it is appropriate to speak of it as a multi-ethnic nation state with not just Ukrainians but also Jews, Poles, Russians, of course, and many other nationalities living within this region, is that the region is largely fissured, a very long-standing, centuries-old fissure, part of which makes Ukraine face towards the east and the north, kind of oriented towards Moscow, and part of it which faces towards the west, toward Warsaw and also towards Paris, London, and New York. We'll see how this occurred over the course of this video, but it is important to note that Ukraine is a rather distinct territory, and although it did not receive formal statehood until the 20th century, it really has a very old history that goes back before most of the countries in this region, including Russia. In fact, it would be more appropriate to say that Russia belongs to Ukraine than to say that Ukraine belongs to Russia, as we shall see.
That Russia belonged to Ukraine more than Ukraine belonged to Russia. So this is deep. Now, the state of this war, the Jewish people, the so-called Jewish people of today, has 100% interest in this, because you have to remember that they run America Federal Reserve through the Rothschilds. All right, so let's continue, and I'll be back with some more commentary after this video.
This map here describes an early medieval region called Kievan Rus. The word Rus is not related to the word Russia, but it refers to a series of principalities. It's hard to use the term state to describe these affiliated princedoms, fiefdoms, but they centered around the city of Kiev. That's the Ukrainian pronunciation, by the way, that's favored today because, of course, Ukrainian is the dominant language in the country, but it used to be called in English Kiev, which is closer to the Russian pronunciation because Russia dominated much of this area in the modern era. But this period of Kievan Rus, which existed long before Moscow was even established, was focused around Ukraine and several of the Slavic peoples that emerged from Kievan Rus, which include not only the Ukrainians but also the Russians, the Poles, the Belarusians in particular. They all owe their cultural heritage to this region of Kievan Rus. What's especially important in its history is the conversion of one of its leaders, Volodymyr, pronounced in Russian Vladimir, shown here in a statue overlooking the Dnipro River that runs through the middle of Kiev. Volodymyr made a decision to convert to Christianity. This is a period when Christianity was expanding in the region, and in the one of the most important early historical documents of the region, something called the Povest Vremeniach Let, or the Chronicle of Bygone Years, there is a discussion of how Volodymyr converted to Christianity, and he had a debate which would actually be familiar to students of Jewish history because the same kind of situation is enacted in the Khazaria by Yehuda Halevi. Specifically, Volodymyr in the 10th century invited representatives from all the major faiths active in the region, not only Muslims but also Jews, and two different types of Christians: Western Christians, meaning Catholics, and Eastern Christians, meaning the Orthodox. He has this long drawn-out discussion about the various merits of each faith. He comes actually very close to adopting both Judaism and Islam, but he rejects Judaism because he is concerned about the fact that the Jews had lost their national homeland. He's concerned about the Muslims for a whole host of strange reasons that the authors of the Povest refer to, not the least of which is that they don't drink alcohol. And ultimately, he decides to adopt Eastern Christianity, that is Orthodox Christianity. And that becomes the faith of the majority of Ukrainians today. Although, as we shall see, a significant movement of Ukrainians in the Western region adopt a form of Catholicism, which retains certain important aspects of Orthodox practice, even while remaining allegiance to the Pope.
That was the take from the rabbi guy. Now, I do want to go over this this article here. It says, when Ukraine was run by Jews, once upon a time, a king decided Judaism was the one true religion, but the Khazar kingdom didn't last long. All right, now that's what they say. All right, and we're gonna find out that the Khazar kingdom became the Teen kingdom. All right, they are one of the same. So I'm gonna go ahead and go through this article. It was a place where I could play it. Let's see. Okay, it's right here. So let's go ahead and go to the article and I'll be back.
When Ukraine was run by Jews, once upon a time, a king decided Judaism was the one true religion. But the Khazar kingdom didn't last long. As Ukraine rides in crisis with sovereignty over Crimea hanging in the balance, it's an apt time to revisit a time when the region was a Jewish kingdom. Not that this is a call to Israel to throw its hat in the race for control of Crimea. The Crimean Peninsula has changed hands and rulers time and again. One such occasion was sometime in the 4th to 5th century, when a Turkic horde invaded from Mongolia, Siberia, and settled the western steppe, mainly the north shores of the Caspian and Black Seas. The invaders were a loose confederation of semi-nomadic pagan tribes who gradually assumed control over the variegated local population. It took time, but by the mid-7th century, a state had taken shape, the Khazar kingdom. This kingdom grew in power and wealth, mostly from taxing the Silk Route to China and other important trading routes between the Arabian and Persian kingdoms in Europe. The people of Khazar constituted numerous ethnic backgrounds and spoke many languages. They also practiced different religions, including Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But the ruling elite was a Turkic aristocracy speaking a Turkic language and practicing a Turkic form of paganism called Tengriism, which focused on a sun deity called Tengri. That is, until at some point in the 8th or 9th centuries, the ruling elite converted to Judaism. An angel drops by. This conversion is confirmed by Jewish, Persian, Arab, and Byzantine sources. Khazar sources do not exist and no archaeological evidence has been found. One interpretation is that only a thin, elite segment of the population converted while the bulk of the populace remained religiously diverse. Legend, and letters from a Khazar monarch preserved in Jewish sources, relate that King Bulan decided to convert after a series of angelic visions told him to seek the one true religion. In his most famous book, the Khazaria, Judah Halevi provides a slightly different version. Bulan had invited Christian and Muslim philosophers to explain their beliefs when a rabbi came in and argued the case for Judaism. The king was convinced and converted together with the aristocracy. Some scholars have suggested that the real reason the Khazar elite decided on Judaism was to take up an Abrahamic religion that would ingratiate them with their Christian and Muslim neighbors on the one hand, while not take either side and thus raise the ire of the members of the religion not chosen. Whatever the reason, the Jewish kingdom didn't survive for long. Incessant wars with Islamic kingdoms in the 9th century and then the rise of the Rus in the north during the 10th century precipitated the decline of the Khazar kingdom until its ultimate destruction by the Rus in the second half of the 10th century. It has been suggested that Ashkenazi Jews are the descendants of these Khazari people.
Okay, welcome back. Now you saw it for yourself. Now this is the final part of this study. I'm going to go through this last article. It says Ukraine and the Jews. All right, so this is the image they got, and it says key moment. And this article was written this year, actually, January 30th. It's a 16-minute read by Dr. Yvette Miller. All right, it says key moment in Jewish history occurring in Ukraine. With a huge buildup in Russian troops along Ukraine borders in recent weeks, many people are fearful that Russia will invade Ukraine. Ukraine is a complex and diverse nation with an incredible, rich Jewish history. Here is 12 facts about Jews in Ukraine. All right, Jews live in Ukraine since ancient times. All right, Jews have been living in present-day Ukraine since ancient times. The ancient Greek city of so whatever that is, near the present-day Sevastopol, located in Crimea Peninsula, which was formerly part of Ukraine and was annexed by Russia in 2014, was once home of the Jews. Professor J. Andrew Overman of Lancaster College directed the Black Sea Project in the 1990s and described some of his team many Jewish finds. All right, a team had focused on uncovering evidence of Jewish presence in Chersoneso during the Roman period. Menorahs, oil lamps with a Torah shrine depicts on the face, and graffiti in Hebrew and Greek have all been found at Chersoneso, whatever that is. One Hebrew fragment even mentioned Jerusalem, the only known instance of this outside of ancient Israel. Additionally, so this is the white man's made up Israel. Additionally, one of the menorahs appear to date from the Hellenistic period, making it one of the earliest known of the scholars. All right, proof Overman observed in 1997 in the letter to the New York Times. All right, so that was one. So two, the kingdom of Khazar converted to Judaism. Eastern Ukraine was home of the Khazar Empire, the kingdom of the Turkic people who arose in southeastern Russia in the 6th century CE, which is AD, and extended as far west as Kiev, which is where the war is fought today, the capital of the present-day Ukraine. In the 8th century, the Khazar king converted to Judaism and ordered that his followers do so as well. Many Khazar became Jewish, embracing Jewish holidays and Sabbath and keeping kosher. All right. The Khazar Moses coin found in the spilling of Hor and dated 800 AD. It is inscribed with Moses in the message of God. Moses is in the messenger. It is the messenger of God instead of the usual Muslim text. Muhammad is the messenger of God. All right, so that is number two. So let's go down. It says the Khazars at the time were ruled by a semi-divine king called Kongan. All right, called a Kongan, and local chieftain called Begs. Legend says that the Khazar king ordered representatives from the three monolithic faith to his palace to listen to each of them discuss their religion. He was struck with Judaism, beauty, and lucidity. All right. In the Middle Ages, a great Spanish Jewish sage, Judah Halevi, 1075 to 1141, wrote the Khazaria, a beautiful philosophical book that imagines and discusses between the king of the Khazars and the visiting rabbi. The Khazaria is a robust defense of Judaism against critics from other religions and from indifferences. See, these people are so defensive of this because they know for a fact that they stole the black African Americans' religion. who are the real Jews. All right, at number 3, Ukraine was a refuge to Jews in the Middle Age. So our people did run to this nation, and our people did get conned out of like giving them this information. All right, check it out. In the Middle Ages were a tumultuous time in Ukraine. Accounts describes a city of Kiev as being home to Jewish communities. So our forefathers did go there when it was being persecuted by the Byzantines. In the 11th and 12th century, there were 2 heavily Jewish suburbs of the city, and one entryway into Kiev city walls that was known as Jewish gates. There are also references of the Jewish scholars at the time known as Moshe ben Yaakov of Kiev. And in the early Middle Ages, the largely Jewish kingdom of the Khazars was buffered by invading Russia's forces. So this goes back all the way to 965 CE, okay, which ransacked the capital city about the year of 965 AD. The end of the Khazar kingdom came in 1200s. Now, America does know this history, and that's why this war is being fought today. You know, they're trying to steal the birthright of the children of Israel. All right, when Mongol tribes invaded much of the present-day Ukraine and Poland, causing huge devastation and loss of life. In order to build back the power and wealth, Poland invited new residents to move into the territory from the west, primarily from Germanic lands. See, all these European nations, Poland, Belarus, all these places is in this thing together. And Russia, I believe, is the good guy out of the heathens. All right. Poland invaded for immigrants to come, attracted Jews who were massacres in Central Europe in the wake of the Crusades and the Black Death. So now the real Jews, a lot of them did run that way. Jews settled throughout Poland, including in territories that formed present-day Ukraine, most notably the region of Valhalia, which lies at the intersection of Poland, Belarus, and Ukraine. By the 1400s, up to 30,000 Jews were thought to live in 60 different communities across Ukraine. Now this probably pertains to the white Jews, because they said that they was persecuted along with us, all right, including the present-day capital of Kiev. All right, and check this out. Look, the great synagogue of Lutsk, renovated after World War II, Lutsk, Ukraine, 1984. All right, so check that out. Now we're gonna go to 4. Ukraine's blamed Jews for their landlord greed. All right, Jewish life in present-day Ukraine became more entrenched after the 1569, when much present-day Ukraine came under new political alliance, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Ukraine was an uneasy mix of many different ethnic groups. Much of the farmland and industry in Ukraine was the property of Polish nobles who were Catholics. All right, the peasants in Ukraine, the peasants in Ukraine were a mix of Eastern Orthodox Ukrainians, a group known as Cossacks, who lived primarily in southern part of Ukraine. In the far south, the Crimean Peninsula was owned by the Ottoman Empire. So listen to this: in the far south, the Crimean Peninsula was owned by the Ottoman Empire, which is the Romans, and populated largely by the Tatar Muslims, which are Edomites that converted to Muslims, who engaged in constant low-level warfare with Cossacks along their borders. Both groups would stage skirmishes into each other's territories, seizing property and slaves. So this is a depiction of that. This is how they look. These people, wow. This is how the chosen people look. They the salt of the earth. These people, no. Cossack Mambi and Haydai Maki hangs a Jewish usurer by the heels. Ukrainian folk art in the 19th century. These people are crazy, man. Okay, with many farms and business owned by absentee Polish landlords and nobles, an exploration system called Arenda developed, which allow agents to manage farms and other enterprises on behalf of absent landlords. It was often Jews who were employed to manage the Arenda economy. So we already know they will get the Ashkenazi Jews to manage someone else's money. All right, this been going along for years and years. Acting as caretakers and absentee noblemen landowners, Jews managed salt mines, farms, mills, and inns, which are hotels, and they also became local tax collectors, just like today, for Polish noblemen. Many arendars were in alcohol trade, so they've been into this procreation thing. I mean, the alcohol business, brewing, selling alcohol, and managing inns and taverns. So they've been selling hotel business, bars were often seen as Jewish professions. Working for hated landlords put Jews in an impossible position. They needed a arenda system in order to survive economical, but the local peasants blamed Jews for their employers, increasing abusive practice. So they were stealing people money back then, and when people complain about it, they say that you was like mean and anti-Semitic. The same thing that's going on today in Hollywood, in banking systems, in the NBA, in the NFL, etc. When Polish noblemen increased taxes on their already suffered tenants, it was their Jewish agents who bore the blame. The same thing today. These people are bloodsuckers. In time, extreme anti-Semitism became ingrained in much of Ukrainian culture. All right, so let's go right here. The Chmelniki massacre. The series of Cossack raids began in 1648. So this is the time when black people in America was into slavery. Aim of freeing Cossack community from dominated the Polish landlords. The leader of these attacks was Bogdan Chmelniki, who agitated for an independent Ukraine country, reflecting Cossack cultures. Chmelniki blamed Jews for their countrymen's problem and encouraged his followers to massacre them. All right. Between 1648 and 1651, Chmelniki killed about 20 Jews with unimaginable barbarity. All right, because they were stealing from them. Approximately half of all Jews living in Ukraine fled. So this is basically their persecution. And again, white on white crime. Black people never did this. They killed these people killing each other, all Turkish people and Russians and the same race of people. All right, so let's continue. So a great, all right, let me start back right here. In 1648 to 1651, Chermoniki followed and killed 20,000 Jews with unimaginable barbarity. Approximately half of all Jews were living in Ukraine fled. So great was the Cossacks, the privity, that some terrified Jews even fled into Crimea, where they faced slavery in the hands of the Muslim Tartars. So this is when they said the Slavs, they were slaves. Oh my God. So another instance of white on white crime. The official records of the Jewish community of Kiev recorded that beginning of the massacre. Immediately after the death of the pious king Wladislaw in 1648, tens of thousands of villains among the Chepskovs fled out of and committed manual murders in the holy communities of Nymiro. Alright, and others whole communities who congregated in order to save their lives from the sword. Since the destruction of the temple of other cruel murder, since the destruction of the temple, no other cruel murder like this was committed for the sanctification of the name of God. So boy, you could tell these people control all media. So the slave trade wasn't worse than this. In the name of God, when the white man came to West Africa and killed all my forefathers. Let's continue. Another witness account describes their massacre about 6,000 souls in a town, and they drowned several hundreds in the water, and by all kinds of cruel torment in the synagogues. Before the holy ark, they slaughtered and butchered with butcher knives, after which they destroyed the synagogues and took out all the Torah books and tore them up, and they laid them out, and the men and animals trampled on them, and also made sandals of them and several other garments. And the Cossacks knew no bounds in their sadism and cruelty, and attacks and killed Jews, as well as some Polish nobles. With heuristic barbarity, Chesmaniki appealed the military aid from Russia, and in 1654, much of the Cossack controlled Ukraine because the client state of Russia. Sporadic pogroms continued through the years, most notably in the city of Uman in 1768. Okay, Ukraine was a major center for Pale settlement. Okay, I'm pretty sure that deals with their skin color. All right, in 1780 and 1790s, Georgia gained an enormous amount of territory, much of which was home of a large Jewish community at the time. Okay, with the outbreak of the Russo-Turkish War in 1768, Russia began to impinging on the Ottoman Empire semi-autonomous holdings in Crimea, Russia. Annexed Crimea in 1783. Crimea borders contemporary Ukraine, was part of Ukraine until 2014, when Russia annexed it once again. So Russia got they property back. Now all of this makes sense, man. So everything that's happening now pertains to what we're reading. This large land acquitted coincide with an even greater gain in territory for Russian Empire. Russia's Empress Catherine the Great oversaw 3 partitions of the Polish-Lithuania Commonwealth in 1772, 1793, and 1795. Within the span of a few years, Russia became home of the largest population of Jews anywhere in the world. Alright, so let's continue. Here's the little visual. Alright, let's continue. Jews had long been banned from living in most Russia, and they remained unwelcome guests even when Poland and Lithuania came under Russian control. Catherine the Great confined Jews to newly acquired territories, with one notable exception. Jews were encouraged to move to Crimea in order to help settle sparsely inhabited territories there. The area where Jews were allowed to live was known as the Pale Settlement. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with their skin color. Alright? And in Russia, in Yiddish. Alright? So Yiddish is their tongue. Alright? Their language. The exact boundaries of this area fluctuate through the years, but it includes Russian-owned Poland, Lithuania, Belarus, present-day Belarusia, and present-day Belarus, Bessarabia, Crimea, and most of Ukraine. In time, the Jewish communities in Ukraine would become one of the most spiritual, vibrant, and influential anywhere in the world. So you trying to tell me that white Ukrainians is more spiritual than black Americans or black people in the world? That's a lie. Look, Hasidic Judaism started in Ukraine. So on my channel I did put the story of how this happened, so you can go check that video out. The founder of Hasidic Judaism is Baal Shem Tov. Alright? Baal, which is the name of a wicked god. Baal. Shem. So it's like the devil in the name of Tov, which is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. That is wicked right there. Devil in the name of Tov. That's what that means. Baal Shem, meaning the name in the name of Tov. Alright? Oh wow, who's this guy just no. He look, I'm in your page. Alright, so let's continue. Before I was rudely interrupted by this Jewish guy. Alright, so where was I? Okay, so I said the Baal Shem Tov was known as the healer and well as a religious sage. Rabbi Dov Ber was so impressed that he adopted the Baal Shem Tov worldwide, which emphasized worshiping God with joy. So worshiping what God? Baal? Oh my God. Within generations, Ukraine was home to some of the most important influential Hasidic masters, including Rabbi Levi, Yitch, whatever that is, of Berdichev, and alright, we're gonna skip that. Ukraine Jewish communities embrace Hasidic Judaism with its emphasis on rigorously religious practice combined with spirituality and an emphasis on infusing religion observance with joy. All right, perhaps the greatest Hasidic rabbi in Ukraine was Rabbi Naaman. All right, from the Ukrainian town of Beslov, 1772 to 1811, a great grandson of Baal Shem Tov and a direct descendant of Maharal, one of the Europe's greatest rabbis who lived in the 16th century. Rabbi Naaman built a large community of Ukrainian towns, Zlopotov, in the early 1600s. He taught that Jews should strive to feel close to God at all times, which is their God is Baal. All right, and that feeling happy is the best way to appreciate all God many blessings. Thousands of Jews visit Rabbi Naaman's grave in Ukraine every year. So this guy became a deity. All right, so look, thousands of Jews visit Rabbi Naaman's grave in Ukraine every year. Let's read about it. The Ukrainian town of Uman, about 125 miles south of Kiev, is where Rabbi Naaman of Breslov lived during the final years of it and his burial. Uman has emerged as the major pilgrimage site for thousands of fake Jews each year and most popular town to go in Rosh Hashanah, when tens of thousands of Jews visit Uman to celebrate the holiday together. So they made a holy day out of a man that's outside of the Bible, which is idolatry. All right, so they practice idolatry. We're going to stop at right here. When tens of thousands of Jews visit Uman to celebrate the holiday together in the place where Rabbi Naaman taught. All right, number 9, the term pogrom was intended after the riot in Ukraine. In 1881, Caesar, Alex II, was murdered by left-wing terrorists. Who is the left wing? So they still have these same terminologies. Left wing is Democrats. All right, Democrat. So we're gonna read it again using that word. In 1881, Caesar Alexander II was murdered by a Democrat. Soon it was being incorrected report across Russia that a new Caesar Alexander III had ordered Russian subjects to kill Jews. Pogrom broke out, with a great number taking place in Ukraine. These weren't the first massacres of the Jews in Ukraine and elsewhere in the Pale of Settlement, but the frequency of and intensity of the mob attack resulted in a phenomenon being given a new name, pogrom, which means violence in Russia. Oh wow. Pogrom, violence in Russia continued throughout the end of the 19th century. Some of the most horrible violence in Russia, that would have mean pogrom, took place in 1905. After Caesar Nicholas II issued the October Manifesto guaranteeing all Russian subjects some basic political rights. The manifesto came at the privileged time in Russian politics, which political rivals ready to attack each other as violence broke out. Mobs turned on the Jews in the midst. Some of the worst anti-Jewish attacks were in Ukraine's city of Odessa. All right, and Jewish newspaper Voskard report that over 800 Jews were murdered. Alright, was murdered. Alright, so alright, so we're gonna go to the next one. Modern Zionism born in Ukraine. 1.5 million Ukrainian Jews were murdered in the Holocaust. So these people that came from, who was killed by Hitler, was from Ukraine. The same people today. And the last one, Ukraine represent a Jewish comedian who once played president on TV. So let me read these last two, because we have to get into this. Before the Holocaust, Ukraine had the largest Jewish population in any European country. For the first year in World War II, Ukrainian Jews were relatively protected by non-aggression pacts that Hitler and Stalin signed, guaranteeing the Nazi troops wouldn't invade Russia's vast territory. So that's why Hitler invaded Russia. Everything's coming together and makes sense now. That changed on June 22nd, 1941, when Germany launched a Operation Barbarossa and invaded the Soviet Union. I remember this actually, like, reading about this. In the ensuing year, special Nazi troops called whatever his name entered town in Ukraine and elsewhere in Eastern Europe, rolled up all the Jews, forced them to dig large mass graves, then shooting them. And the largest Nazi massacre in Ukraine, and one of the largest single massacres in the entire Holocaust, took place near Ukraine. So they say Germany, but it happened in Ukraine, capital Kiev. Dang. On September 28, 1941, in Barbary Yacht. Okay, on that morning, all Jews were ordered to assemble in the center of the city under the Nazi guard, and a full view of populace that were marching out of the city to a large neutral ravine of the outskirts of Kiev called Barbary Yar. The obstinable reason given for the wholesale massacre of the Jewish women, children, and old men. Most young men were away fighting. Was a Soviet attack military headquarters of Kiev. Wow. So the land that they're fighting the war at right now is where a large massacre of Jews, so-called Jews, were massacred. Wow. So here's the site. The Nazis C Unit, which carry out the killing, swept records for this day. Okay, bitter hostility of the Ukrainians population against the Jews is extremely great. All Jews were arrested and retaliation for the arson of Kiev. So they burned the city down, and altogether 33,771 Jews were executed on September 29th and 23rd. Gold, valuable, and clothing were collected, given to the appointed city administration, and distributed to the needy population. So Russia felt they're needy and took all their gold. Alright, 371 Jews were shot over 2 days and their bodies thrown into the Barbary Yar ravine. Okay, Over the following 2 years, more than 60,000 people were murdered at Barbie Yar. In addition, the Jews, Soviet POWs, Roma, and physicians, patriotic, whatever, patents from the nearly hospital were also killed. It estimated that approximately 100,000 people were murdered at Barbie Yar. 60,000 of them were Jews. Following the Holocaust, Ukrainian Jews faced hostility and violence from their neighbors. When they returned, the crimes of the Holocaust were covered up. Barbie Yar was largely filled in and only received a memorial in 1776. It's not specifically that Jews were the primary victims who died there. So, and this is the final one. Ukraine president, a Jewish comedian who once played president on TV. When Ukrainian President Zelensky was elected in 2019, he was a politician, though he played it on TV. So this was all a big conspiracy scam, and this was all put together by Sleepy Joe Biden and them. Alright. Zelensky, who was 41 when he became Ukraine president, shot to fame in Ukraine when he appeared on a hit TV show called Servant of the People. Wow, you can't make this up. In which he played an honest president. His fellow countrymen were sick of corrupt and elected Jewish actor with a landslide. So they, just like America did, we elected Ronald Reagan, who was a actor also. President Zelensky is Jewish and is Ukraine's former prime minister. As he faces 100,000 Russian troops amassed at his border, President Zelensky is hoping to fend off the Russian invasion, and has appealed to the example of the Jewish state, which vigorously defends himself from external enemies. Both Ukrainian and Jews value freedom, and they work equally for the future of our state to become to our liking, and not the future which others want for us. Israel is often an example for Ukraine. Alright, so that was the article, and it was written by Dr. Yvette Miller. Lives with her family in Chicago and has lectured internationally on Jewish topics. Her latest book is The Portrait of Valor, Heroic Jewish Woman. Alright, describe and lives of 40 remarkable women, blah blah blah. Now with that in mind, that's the end of this study. I thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and thank you for watching Word on the Street, where we bring you hot topics, history, biblical breakdowns, and more. And thank you again. Peace.
Yeah. Welcome to Word on the Street. Struggle, hard times in our community. Yeah. Word on